try to adjust the distance his hip travels,
Mhm.
but it still doesn't help much.
Okay. And you're talking
Yeah,
specifically
I think
about skinny guy or fat guy?
the skinny guy.
Skinny guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And
I
so,
can't, I can't fix the hyperextension on the leg.
okay. And that's in. Yep. I see. If I, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm like covering the leg part of the skinny guy,
Mhm.
and it feels mostly successful. It feels clean. You have a nice counter relationship between the hips and the chest. Um, I think where it starts to get a little like disconnected is that relationship between the feet and the body, and that state of balance, imbalance, trying to regain balance. How much back do the feet need to be to slow them down? There's a lot of questions that come into play. Following the reference closely can help you get a grasp on that, but if we've deviated from the reference, then we already kind of like we've already given ourselves another challenge. Um, so if you had to redo this, I'd probably say follow the reference really closely. That way you know exactly where the foot should be. But then if after you kind of have a feeling for it, you'll start to be able to apply that to more interpretive shots, if that's a struggle specifically. But we can still make this work. So let's take a look at it. Um, the one thing about the mass and the body is if I tracked the speed of the hips through here and just the momentum of his body, it's fairly large here, but this next spacing will probably be the biggest one between 31 and 32 because that's the moment where he's been pushed and now gravity is also starting to push him as he falls. So it may not be significantly larger, but it'll be larger. So knowing where to put that large spacing is what's going to give him more weight. So that's one of the questions I always ask is like, where's the largest spacing and why is it there? So I'd probably put it there, and then it could potentially continue to slightly accelerate, but I think that would probably be my first guess would be to put the large spacing right there, and then it could accelerate right up until the point that he catches himself, if his body isn't changing direction. If his chest is going this way, like you're pulling forward already, then that can affect the momentum of your hip. So that relationship from that point on can be a little subjective to what the rest of the body is doing, but it's usually a surefire bet that it's definitely not slowing down right away. So I think you may just be a case of too many frames where in here it gets slightly, if we track the back of your, let's just say just do a better line there, your back of your hips through this section. One of the main struggles of floaty animation is because things are even. So whenever you start to see spacing that is very much like the same through a section like this, it starts to lose that sense of ease in and ease out, and that's what makes things feel floaty. It honestly doesn't take much for it to not feel floaty. Like even if it's not at a level that we can um, necessarily be able, like subtle animation, it gets to the point where you may be trying to draw lines to see if your spacing is getting bigger or smaller, but it's so subtle that you're just drawing lines on top of lines on top of lines. But in the graph editor, it can tell us whether it's easing out or easing in and whether it's traveling linearly. And as long as that exists, you'll avoid more floaty animation, even in subtle cases. But broad ones are definitely more of a dead giveaway when we see that even spacing, because things are constantly in a state of acceleration or deceleration, unless they're a robot or you're in space, um, or any other physical anomalies. So I'd probably say just speed up timing through this section for the body itself. The other thing to think about is the body stays in this angle for a while. a lot of times either it's going to start pulling forward right away, kind of like a spring, like you pushed, and then automatically your body tries to like push it forward again. Or if you're like so out of balance that you're just falling backwards, you would be continuously rotating the other way. So it just feels slightly off that we stick in that angle for so long. I can see that it's not completely locked in it, but I think it would be nice to see either it come back a little earlier or go back even further slightly, just to really sell that reaction. If you go back even further, it's going to affect your path. So that could be a harder solution. But if we took a look at actually, let me pull up the reference and we can see what he did really quick. So that's a subtler one, but let's take a look at a broader one. So for him, it's actually interesting because the most extreme angle is actually happening probably right there, and then from that point on, oh no, I lied. Most extreme one is right there, just slightly after being pushed. But there's actually a moment in here where the hips are starting to kind of catch up, but then they don't. And then here you can see that chest tries to pull forward, so you end up with like this kind of angle in the body through that transition. As that chest tries to get in front of basically everything's trying to get this mass in front of where the feet are planting so that you can generate some force to stop it from traveling this direction. That's the opposing. The feet are providing the opposing force to the backwards momentum. So it's just important to think about it that way. So just keep an eye on that relationship. There you can see it really doesn't spend too long in that rotation. It's kind of like just an extreme he gets into and then he's already pulling out of it. So just try to see it that way.
Okay.